So welcome everybody. My name is Angie Grove. I am the executive director at the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. And today is our free monthly lecture. We are on Zoom again, hoping that you all are warm and cozy in your homes instead of going to the freezing cold museum right now. I do have an announcement though. Next month's free monthly lecture will be back at the museum. So this is our last winter Zoom one. So I look forward to seeing you all again in person for our March lecture. So let me tell you really quickly what the March lecture is to encourage you to join us. It will be on Sunday, March 15th at 2:00 p.m. And it is called A Tale of Two Trails, following in the footsteps of the Knox Expedition by Benjamin Smith, an author and historian. And that will be particularly timely. I don't know if any of you are following. Fort Ticonderoga is redoing the Knox Trail expedition, and they're putting YouTube videos out with updates on it. So that happened 250 years ago to this date. In March is when the cannons reached Boston. So it'll be 250 years ago to the almost to the day, just a couple days off. So hope you can join us for that. Okay. So if you do not already know, the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum is a nonprofit museum, and we have lots of programs. We're open to the public starting in May through October. And we do a lot of educational programs and reenactment events as well. So if you have it within your means, I'm going to put a link in the chat box here. And please click this link sometime during this presentation. Go ahead and click it now, just so you have the tab open, where you can either join us as a member to give us continuing support, or you can make a one-time donation. We do have 2 more weeks of our winter fundraising drive, and we are $892 away from our goal. So if you are able to give $5 or $10 today, if everyone here gave $10, that would help us get a little bit closer to that goal. So I really appreciate your support. Thank you. Okay, I also want to make sure we all know that we owe a gratitude of thanks as well to Richard and Linda Smarg, who are the sponsors of this program. So thank you to them as well for their support. And thank you to Town Meeting TV, also known as CCTV. MJ is here for Town Meeting TV. You'll see a screen that says Town Meeting TV, who helps us record all of our lecture programs and then put them on YouTube to make them more accessible to more people. So thank you for their partnership with this program as well. Okay. So I am happy to introduce to you today's speaker, Dr. Meg Mott. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Meg in a minute. But when I'm done, I then have some logistical announcements as well for those of you who maybe don't have your cameras on. We're going to encourage you to turn them on, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Okay, so first let me introduce our speaker. So today we have Dr. Meg Mott presenting Can Vermonters Be Free Without Virtue? A look at the Vermont Bill of Rights. So after 20 years of teaching Marlborough College undergraduates how to think for themselves, Meg has brought her love of argument and law to the general audiences across Vermont and New Hampshire. Her award-winning program, Debating Our Rights, brings contentious issues with constitutional implications to different public libraries and museums today. She is currently working with Vermont towns to mitigate flood damage using arguments across the political spectrum. And for the last 10 years, she has been Putney's town moderator. So definitely someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to civic and government issues. We're so glad to have her join us. Okay, today's lecture is a little bit more of an interactive discussion. So you might notice we don't have a PowerPoint up on the screen. Instead, you can see Meg has her beautiful whiteboard there. And there's going to be plenty of opportunity for brainstorming and shouting out ideas, asking questions. So I do encourage you to turn on your camera as long as you're comfortable with it, so that we can see that this is a community and you can see the faces. We all know the potential damage that comes from the anonymous conversation that happens online sometimes. So if you are able to turn your camera on and make yourself a little less anonymous, that will definitely help build conversation and community in this discussion. The second thing I wanted to say with this is I also encourage you to change your view settings to either gallery or multi-speaker. That will also help you see the community that is participating in this conversation. So if you don't know how to do that, then I'll walk you through it real quick. On your Zoom screen, for me, it's up at the top next to where you would minimize or close the window. There's the word view, and then there's some dots that make a grid. If you click on view, you'll then get options for how to view the screen. You might have it set to speaker already or other view versions, and I recommend gallery or multi-speaker. That way you can see more faces in the community that's joining us today. Okay. Those are all the logistics for me. I'm going to stick around though. I'll be here this whole time to moderate the chat box, help with technical issues if there are any, and I'll help facilitate the chat box as well, Meg, so you can focus in
Great.
person on the beautiful faces here too.
All right.
Okay, so everyone, please, you can give silent applause or visual applause, but please welcome our speaker, Meg Mott.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you, the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. I love looking out here and seeing all your faces. Thank you so much. I see a local gal in the room. Nice to see Becky here, and I'm eager to get to know everybody else here on this call today. Um, yeah, so I thought we might use the chat feature a little bit, so I'll just throw out a question, and then we're going to get into the weeds. But because we're going to be talking about our rights and what we are afforded in this country and what we need to afford one another, I thought before we got started into the big sentence, which is 250 years old this year, what is the pursuit of happiness? What does that term mean to you? So, any thoughts? If you want to just put them in the chat, that would be great. And then I'm going to start going along with my uh, dog and pony show that I have. But yeah, what is this? The pursuit of happiness. And if something comes to mind, throw it in the chat. And then we're going to talk about it in greater detail. Uh, but I'm going to start because 250 years ago, there was this sentence that was dropped upon the world. It's quite an extraordinary sentence. Uh, Back in the day, people used to memorize it. I won't put you on the spot, but we'll see how far we can go. Oh, I love the answers that are already coming in. This is so beautiful. That we hold these truths to be self-evident. Starts off with a great bang. First of all, there's a we, and that we're a we that's capable of holding something. And we're able to hold something that is, we say, self-evident. That means that just our little selves gathering together, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, pretty great start. It turns out the sentence did go longer, but there was a printer's error early on in its life. So the sentence does not end there. But I understand why the printer stuck the sentence in, the period then. Because that first pass at this new political project, it's kind of prelapsarian. It's kind of, we are able to do everything. We are the great creator of this new political project, we the people, and that we're able to hold something, and that we are able to hold something that involves unalienable rights, and that these include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So let me go to my chat. Yeah, and I see that one can live as one desires without hurting others. And that's a beautiful thing, that inside each one of us, we have something. We have a desire. The freedom to pursue our dreams and ambitions without fear of reprisal. Um, Next one down, freedom to live as you choose and afford the same opportunity to all. I'm going to just draw a couple because I can't do anything without drawing stick figures. So if we start to think about this prelapsarian condition that we have in the opening clause of this very long sentence, we see a lot of people here, and these people are happy to be living together as long as they're able to fulfill their heart's desires, to pursue their dreams. Um, and that we are allowing everybody the same thing. So I'm going to put a little heart here. It was just Valentine's Day. That these are desires that we each have, and that they're somewhat what's the word? Generous, because we're not trying to dominate anybody else. So this is quite an extraordinary picture that we have of the human species. There's not a lot of evidence in human history to say that this could be pulled off, but it's a beautiful statement to make that here we have all these people, we're living together, we're all equal, and we're happy because each one is able to follow our inner desires and then to be able to live with others in that same way. So, but let's keep going with the sentence because it gets more interesting. So, to secure those rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So I'm getting some head nodding. So far our community is holding up pretty well, right? That we cannot have this kind of government to take care of these kind of needs if we don't all consent to it. And I know not everybody has their camera on, which is totally fine, because you might want to be kind of in the background saying, maybe I consent to it, maybe I don't. I'm going to just see how this all plays out. But the next section after I almost think of it, we start in the Garden of Eden and now we're moving into Exodus. We're starting to get out there and having to organize ourselves. And if you've read your Exodus, you know that poor Moses was stuck with a lot of complaining people in the desert, 40 years complaining. And here were these people who said, okay, we'll follow Moses, but we're going to consent to what he has to do, has to say. That's not entirely true, right? Because God needed to say something to Moses for him to have that kind of authority, but we're not doing divine rights of king anymore. And so in our sentence, we're going to create our government and the whole legitimacy of the government. Here's my little Capitol building. The whole legitimacy is because everybody here, or at least enough people here, are saying yes. So deriving our just powers from the consent of the governed. Looks pretty good. But there's another clause. And after January 6th, it's different to talk about this clause. Whenever any form of government is destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So it turns out one of these unalienable rights we have, a lot of times we go right to the Bill of Rights. Oh, we love these unalienable rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of press. I give many talks on the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, the right to due process. I was talking to Angie before everyone was coming on about the grand jury system. Don't we love it that the government has to get an indictment, pass a grand jury before charges can be brought? So we have all these beautiful rights. But in this sentence, they gave us a big one. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish it whenever they think it is no longer protecting these basic ends. And keeps going, to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them, we just went from we to them in this sentence, by the way, little grammatical shift here, as to them seems most likely to secure their safety and happiness. So this sentence goes through this enormous life cycle of a political organism. We begin in the Garden of Eden. There we are, holding self-evident truths. Everybody's equal. We could be singing a song. I feel like there's that great song. I'm sure you all will know it. Some of you could probably sing it. Come on, people now. Love one another. Everybody get together. I have that song in my mind a lot, kind of as a, yeah, we can do it. We hold these truths. We got it. And then it turns out, so if some of us don't like what's happening, we have the right to alter or abolish what we've just built. And then we have to set immediately, there's no period there, we have to keep going, build something else that to us seems most likely to affect our safety and happiness. Wow, simple, right? And we might think, at least I used to think, that I could have a lot of confidence in this because that last little clause to lay its foundation on such principles and organize its powers in such form as to them seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness seemed like the Constitution to me. Because there we had this great organizational roadmap. And I still totally believe in the Constitution. Don't read me wrong. I'm feeling very, very like, go Constitution. I love the way that we have three branches. We have federalist system. The states co-share power. There's so many times when we're seeing a time when it feels like the whole ship could fall over, where something happens with the states or something happens with the courts. And there's that sense of, okay, this is a good design. The Constitution is just great. And I still feel very pro-Constitution. But here's the dilemma. I think we understand what the pursuit of happiness is in a sense of we can do this as long as we don't hurt one another. It's all going to be fine. But what happens, and I'll use something slightly controversial, which is what if some of the people say here, and is my little, are you able to see this at all? Is a little bit my stick figures. I know it's not perfect. What if some of the people feel, yes, I believe in this, and I am a member of a religiously conservative community, and for me, it's very, very important for me to raise my children with that they value, that they're able to follow my values. So if some of the people say, yes, we believe all this, and we love the First Amendment and our religious liberties, and we're concerned about what's happening in the schools, because some of the things being taught to our children is against our religious, deeply held religious beliefs. So that's one group. And then we have another group that's over here, and that group says, we want to create an environment where kids of all genders feel safe. And so we like elements of the First Amendment, especially because we're not hurting anybody to let kids determine for themselves what their gender is. So, and there may not be something in the Constitution specifically about this, but you can definitely make a case for equality, that basic liberty. And you can also make a case for parents and parental rights. And parents should be able to help their kids make certain private decisions. But when these two groups are trying to resolve the issue, it doesn't always go well. I think we can see that. There was some recent Supreme Court cases about this. The most recent one, Mahmoud, which came out of Maryland, in which some Muslim families, and it wasn't just in the plaintiffs' Muslim families, but they were the plaintiffs that got put in the driver's seat of this particular case. They were told that no, you can't opt out of a certain program for kids. And so, in that not being able to opt out, they brought this case, and now it's still a big clash. So, this idea that we can all pull this off in our little prelapsarian condition of the beginning of the clause, beginning of the sentence, isn't necessarily true. So, maybe my first little question for you is, do you have a sense like how the pursuit of happiness, and we got some lovely things there in the chat, could the pursuit of happiness resolve this issue? It's a hot button issue in the United States, and not just the United States, in Vermont. So I'm curious, before we keep going, is there something about the pursuit of happiness that might help us resolve this tough issue? And everybody has the right to remain silent too. I just want you to know that. I think it's in your Fifth Amendment. Yeah. And if
Well,
you,
I'll
yeah,
just start by this doesn't necessarily provide the answer to your question, but one of the first things I thought of with this part of the presentation was that different people's definition of harm or view of harm is different, so that is what sometimes leads to these clashes.
yeah. Thank you, Angie. So I'm going to just write this down. Both sides are going to feel harmed. And then what does that mean to feel harmed? If you feel harmed, then you feel like I'm not getting why should I consent to this kind of government? Because I'm
And
feeling harmed. Yeah.
I'm also just going to speak for the chat box. Angela Moody added in also people's definition of happiness is different as well.
Yeah.
Um, and Jim McFadden put in specifically not impinging on the rights of others. So,
Yeah.
Jim, I don't know if you could elaborate. Do you mean like that's how we clarify this? I'm getting a head nod. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, and that's a lovely thing to figure this out is like, when are certain rights getting impinged on? If you talk to the parents who brought this case, the Mahmoud case, because they were not allowed to opt out, they believed their parental rights were being infringed upon. But the school district, and they were supported up through the state system. So this was something that went through several layers of litigation. It was only when it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, that's a little too far. School districts cannot say you can't opt out for religious reasons. The school district was in a tough position because the school district had let many other types of parents opt out of other issues. So the opt out had been available, but then they stopped being available to these parents about this issue. And that's where, but you, Jim, you're absolutely right. It's when, because we want to see this working so well that these rights are here and those rights are there. And this little place here, maybe we wouldn't have to be so unhappy with each other. This could be a place of toleration. And so we could learn to make do. Unfortunately, in our contentious times, these things become a big bash up as each side, as Angie says, feels more harmed. And so then it gets resolved by the courts. And usually, when things get resolved from the courts, the winners go, Yay! Everybody knew we were wonderful. And the losers go, I hate the courts. Hate the courts, hate the courts. And then we're at that position. So that's one little dilemma. I want to make sure I don't cut anybody else. Anybody else want to jump in on this? Otherwise, I'm going to give you a much easier one to talk about. Second one is, I was hoping that the Constitution and the way we set things up and the fact that we had a literate population and that we had such lovely education. I mean, the American educational system is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you compare to many other countries, we are so lucky to have the educational system we have. And that's true also of higher ed. The amount of Nobel prizes that come out of American universities is really quite extraordinary. However, as well as having this beautiful system, it turns out that one of our most precious rights, free speech, is not particularly beloved by college students. So polling has been getting worse and worse in case, unless you're somebody who is not a fan of free speech. And I'm guessing if you've come to this lecture and are interested in what the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum is putting on, you have some interest in this part of our background, of our history. But the statistics were, this is a 2025 survey that involves 68,510 college students. So that's a lot. It's a big survey. And it turns out that 71% of college students feel that it is good to shout down a speaker you disagree with. So 71% will shut down a speaker. And this gets to, I think, Angie's question, if they feel harmed by the speaker, or if they think that somebody else will be harmed by the speaker. So, and Middlebury was probably one of the first to take on that problem in, I think it was 2017, when Charles Murray came to Middlebury and the students shouted him down, and other people came to campus and shouted him down. 54% of college students feel that it's okay to block other students from hearing a speaker. So 54% will actually move people out of the way. They will make it impossible to get in to hear the speaker. And 70, oh, and one in three feel that violence is justified. 1 in 3 college students feel that violence is justified in order to stop a speaker from saying something that they feel harmful. And that to me seems quite sad because has our pursuit of happiness and what constitutes happiness become so sensitive, I'm tempted to say, that we can't even allow this kind of coexistence, that we're just going to say that one side gets to do this to the other side. Just dominate. Just make it impossible to hear. So then I began to wonder, gee, Constitution hasn't changed. There hasn't been that much that's happening right now for this kind of lack of concern for our rights. So what does the sentence mean if we're not holding these rights to be self-evident? So I got a little worried about that, I confess. Teaching in college at Marlborough College, watching the changes, hearing more and more people say that free speech was harmful, that words were violence, and that many students, if I wanted to present a counter argument, would actually leave the room. And that felt to me like, whoa, 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 we can't do our prelapsarian beautiness anymore. We can't be together, we hold. So, what I discovered in doing some more research, so what did they mean by the pursuit of happiness? It turns out it was a fairly specific project. And if you're interested in this, there's a new book, well, 2 years now, Pursuit of Happiness, Jeffrey Rosen. He's the head of the National Constitution Center, or was up until very recently. And this book goes through every single virtue that constitutes the pursuit of happiness. So, as you all rightly said, it has a lot to do with this feeling what's from the inside and going out. It has a lot to do with knowing that other people may define happiness differently than you do. But then they get into the weeds. To be happy back in the day, in 1776, all of
Ethan
these guys,
Allen's day.
what? Yeah.
Ethan Allen's day.
Ethan Allen's day, exactly. Thank you. And Angie, feel also, I'd love it if you want to jump in for any of this, that because when they were talking about happiness, they were reading Cicero, they were reading Epictetus, they were reading Marcus Aurelius, They were reading scripture. I don't want to minimize scripture, but so much of this comes out of ancient philosophy. Epictetus was a Roman slave, and he's probably the first one who came up with the serenity prayer that we know from the 12-step meeting. Basically, don't want life to be the way you want it. Love the life you've got. Don't react, accept. Figure out how to have a strong inner life and you won't need so many material possessions. If you've read Socrates, Socrates makes similar claims. If you've read Jesus, Jesus makes similar claims. This idea that happiness is on the spiritual level and not on the material level. In order to be a fully happy person, yes, you follow your desires, but you also stick with reason. And don't let your desires run away from you. And don't let your passions run away from you. So, happiness was really all about virtue. And the virtues um, show up not in our Constitution, the virtues show up in our state constitutions. The Constitution and the Declaration aren't operating in a vacuum. All these little states have come up with ways to try and organize themselves. And so I thought we'd spend a little bit of time thinking about Vermont's Constitution, which I hadn't spent as much time with. We start our Constitution with our Bill of Rights. There are, and some of the Bill of Rights, the rights that are protected under Vermont, are similar to what we have in the federal government, in the U.S. Constitution. But then Article 18 sneaks in this whole little morality tale, which is not about rights, nor is it about what the government can't do. It's what we have to do, each one of us. We have to, according to Article 18, I wrote it on a piece of paper, that frequent recurrence to fundamental principles and a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, industry, and frugality are absolutely necessary to preserve the blessings of liberty and keep government free. So I just want to write these down here. Justice, uh, moderation, just temperance, industry, and frugality.
Meg, I'm sure you're going to speak about all of them in a minute, but
Uh,
as a historian, the thing that comes to mind when seeing the word temperance is alcohol temperance.
Right.
That can't be what they're talking about in the 18th century. They drink alcohol like it was water. So
Yeah.
maybe you
Yeah.
can explain that one first.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that. So, because really, you'd say temperance. That's like the women's temperance movement. And so women weren't able to get the vote in Vermont for a long time because they thought they'd just prohibit everything that was any good. I think there's all this lovely historical record about women in Vermont trying to get the vote. And they said, no, we know what you ladies want. You just want us to keep us from drinking. Well, sure, temperance had something to do with being able to, as Ben Franklin said, uh, eat not to dullness, drink not to exuberance. So, and it wasn't just drinking, it was also eating. Like, be careful with temperance. But it also had a virtue element. So, speak not to dullness, could be one way to think about it, uh, nor wax on to elation. See, temperance is a way of tempering ourselves. There's also a way of thinking about temperance, which is I'm feeling very afraid right now, and I'm nervous what these people are going to do to try and take away my rights, and I'm getting more and more upset about them. And as I do that, I'd better remember temperance. And temper, as I can think about temperature, bring it down a couple volumes. This is what the Stoics, Epictetus, and Cicero would say is don't, what is it? There's two things in the Delphic Oracle. One is know thyself and nothing in excess, or know thyself and take it light. So temperance is like take it light. Don't go all crazy with your feelings or your desires to eat. So temperance is one that we might associate just with drinking, but also had to do with this inner regulation. So Jim says, yeah, temperance sounds a lot like moderation. And Jim, I was with you. It's like, what's the difference between those two things? Because temperance is you're dealing with the same thing. Take it down a notch. Take it down a notch. Well, it turns out moderation has a um, very specific register. What I wrote down that Ben Franklin said, avoid extremes. Okay, that's a little like, don't go party animal on me, but also don't be completely against the pleasures of the flesh. So moderation will have it on both sides. But what Ben Franklin said is avoid extremes. We'll go into this next statement. Forbear resenting injuries as much as you think they deserve. Moderation. Forbear resenting injuries as much as you think they deserve. So if we go back over here, oops, if we were to bring moderation in here, because this is very sad, I can't remove my X. But I think I would tell the people over here who want to take out the people over there, I think I would say to them, they're not trying to injure you as much as you think. Have a little forbearance. Don't be so quick to assume someone is injuring you.
Jim has added in the chat box, it reminds him of turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek. Yeah, absolutely. And that there can be practical benefits to that. Eh, I'm part of I'm sure many on this call are, a sense of second wave feminism where that was understood as like, yeah, maybe we're tired of turning our cheek. And there was some arguments to be had in that realm. However, I think we can see with this kind of animosity right now that the virtue of moderation and forbearing injuries could also have good political consequences. If we are each getting so riled up, we're not being very moderate. Yeah. So Jim, I'm still wrestling with these things like what's temperance and what's moderation. I'm beginning to understand is temperance is inside work, moderation is relational work. So that's something we all need to be practicing. Um, but let's go back to our list here.
You know, Meg, that makes sense to me because if I think of the word to moderate, you moderate a conversation that's outside, that's relational.
Yeah,
So that's a versus, temperance, temperature. You can't control somebody else's temper, only
right.
your own. So that
Yeah.
for me may be an easy way to think of it as temperance is internal and moderate
Is
is relationship.
Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, good. Because Angie, really, I've been like thinking about this myself, and Jeffrey Rosen's book is fairly helpful in this regard. But it turns out there's not bright lines between these different virtues. So there are ways to think about something, and then we have to puzzle with them on our own. Um, Industry, and I'm teaching a class on this at Keene State, and this past week on Thursday, we were talking about industry and what industry can mean, um, be useful. That's something Ben Franklin would have said. Thomas Jefferson, don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today. And one of the Keene State students said, I have to put off tomorrow or I'm going to burn out. There's just too much on my plate. I am doing way too much. My heart goes out to these young people who are working so hard. And so industry just feels horrible. Like, don't give me any more to do. So then we got into the chapter and looked again like, what is industry? Industry is deciding to work on something that will give you more tranquility, inner tranquility, because that's what this pursuit of happiness is. We're pursuing what we want, not just to feel good, but to become stronger people and therefore have inner tranquility. So we spent some time in the class gazing. We gazed out the window. This seemed like a good use of our time. This is a type of industry where you channel your limited resources. Oh, Angela, I got to read what you just said. Or Angie, could you read what Angela just said?
Yeah, so Angela put in the chat box, work the plan rather than planning the work. In other
Yeah,
words, whatever you choose to do, be industrious at it without scattering your efforts.
exactly. Yeah. And I love, Angela, that you've got something. I mean, I see a lot of, we'll go into more details, but that's the first one where I had like, it sounds a little like the 12-step program. The 12-step program is something that's an American invention, very grassroots, democratic, free, open. All men are created equal. All alcoholics are created equal. All whatever fill in the category are created equal. That here and there a lot of times it's work the program, and that's the job. The job is to work the program. So, and I'm not saying that's the only way to do that, but it is an element where we're still keeping these virtues alive and where inner strength is the highest value. Um, so, industry, we don't want to lead to burnout, people. We want to learn to inner tranquility. Frugality, and I will do justice, I haven't forgotten it. Frugality is spend to be useful to others. Spend to be useful to others. Do not waste. So that frugality, a lot of times nowadays, we think about it in very individualistic terms, our own budgets. And I'm not saying anything about that's bad about that. But this again is more relational, more community based. That we're going to be careful with our funds so that we can then have be able to offer them to our neighbors when they are in need, and that's an element of frugality. So all these bottom four are necessary to really inhabit and understand in order for us to get to this big one, justice, which is a hard term. Plato did a whole dialogue. He did the Republic, trying to define what is justice. And he came to the end of like, well, it's being in right relationship to one another. And right relationship is fairly involved because inside each one of us is a mess. So we have to become right relationship to ourselves. So they're not just thrown around with these reactions and these passions. Um, so justice is do not injure and do not omit your duty. And we got at the first part in some of these beautiful answers to the pursuit of happiness. And what did that mean? That we stay out of each other's space, that we really leave each other alone. Um, and um, and then from that, we can't just stay alone in our isolated little spots. And it kind of breaks my heart um, to look what happens to us on Zoom. This is a picture of us in our little individual spaces. And as we get more and more individualized through technology, and thank goodness for Zoom over COVID, I don't want to be, so this got us through some tough times, many of us. But isn't it interesting that I think the thing we're having a hardest time right now is being able to reach out of our individual little places and understand the kind of the duties that we have to each other. And that those duties we are in need of one another, but because we doubt each other's definition of happiness, we don't live in that kind of world where we're all having the same kind of happiness. This is the hard work to reach out and say, oh, there's someone over there who I want to be in right relationship with, but I'm not entirely sure who they are. Um, there was more good things in the chat. Oh yeah, and Bailey.
Hello.
I
I just I've been listening to this and just thinking about sort of the over it feels like the pursuit of happiness is kind of like a small branch to the bigger picture of what I see as like connectedness.
Yeah.
And I feel like just kind of pondering the idea of happiness, how we all may have either similar or different ideas of what that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, um happiness in general and the pursuit of this like one thing, which I am all about happiness for all and moments of
Mm-hmm.
happiness throughout our days, but I feel like it's just kind of a mere sort of speck of what, as we have like the full spectrum of human emotions and feelings and experiences, sort of trying to narrow ourselves into this one avenue of happiness is not actually creating more connectedness in the whole, because none of us can agree on what that actually means.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
just curious of like
yeah.
people's thoughts on just more of an overarching thing. Like I think about, okay, if I'm trying to express my feelings or I'm trying to be seen in a public space of what my opinion is, as opposed to maybe someone's varying opinion, am
Mm-hmm.
I looking for validation? Or
Mm-hmm.
I think about things like that are bigger picture things, like is our water clean, is our soil clean, are our like really really true basic needs being
Mm-hmm.
met, or are we just all looking for like emotional validation of what
Mm.
fleeting feelings are? And so that's what
Yeah.
I
Can
want
I
to.
ask you a question, Bailey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your point about connectiveness is super important. And so, and that happiness should increase our sense of connectivity and not just be an individual feeling. So I'm curious in your life, because you've obviously been thinking about this, where are the ways where you feel like, oh, when this happens in my community, I feel like there's connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel it's really shared humanity. I
Mm-hmm.
think whether it's happy or not, our shared humanity, our shared going through this, it's communication. I think even just on like an individual level, like what am I
Mm-hmm.
connecting to? you know
Mm-hmm.
a higher source that I'm connected to. Am I connected to the earth? Am I present? Am
Mm-hmm.
I connected in my daily life and
Mm-hmm.
individuals around me, or am I in my own bubble,
Mm-hmm.
trying to stay at an equilibrium of happiness? So I think
Mm, mhm,
for me
mhm,
it's shared humanity.
mhm.
It's
Yeah,
another, and really seeing the other, whether they are happy or not, or whatever they're going through.
yeah. Seeing the other as somebody else who's going through their own issues, not getting so injured, perhaps, in how they're talking. But Bailey's point about this connectedness also to the land. I mean, isn't this era that we're going to be in, that we are in, that many of you, I'm sure, in this call have been for a long time? How do we engage in justice, moderation, temperance, industry, and frugality in such a way that the air, the water, the mountains, the forests, the wildlife are also able to flourish as well. So the happiness isn't so much about this feeling, especially on an individual level, but it's a belief, in a sense, that's what I'm getting, that we all need each other and we need to be better caregivers of this world that we're in, and that these virtues may help us be better caregivers. Angie,
When
yeah.
you're, yeah, what I'm going to bring up a couple things that are in the chat, but trying to connect them to the idea of caregivers. Colleen and Angela Moody both put in comments about frugality specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And Colleen said, is frugality, only a financial concept? What about thinking of it as far as frugality of our energy, being
Mm-hmm.
frugal in our opinions? And Angela Moody
Mm-hmm.
added in, and frugal with our time.
Mm-hmm.
And both of their comments, I think reminds me of the term you just used as caretakers of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
is in part, being frugal of our time, frugal of our energy, to
Yeah.
like the phrase that is often used today is self-care,
Right.
but
Right.
like learning to say no and not overcommit
Yeah.
uh, and then Donna also put in a comment that an over kind of overarching comment about it sounds like language is key, making sure we use words the same way so that
Uh-huh.
we can be effective and efficient.
Yeah.
So, Meg, do you have thoughts on that, or how difficult that is, or how to make that easier for us to do in conversations?
Yeah, and yeah, I'd love to do that, and then I'll see what Angela some further thoughts on that. But what comes to my mind is these five words here, justice we hear a lot about, but sometimes it's spoken in such broad terms. Like, is it environmental justice? Is it racial justice? Is it trans rights justice? So it's almost like justice then becomes a placard for a certain political movement or social movement. And that's not bad, but I don't think it gets at this very relational ethic that we need to be developing with each other. So, I mean, I would love to have a virtue curriculum, but I don't want it just to be in the schools, but this idea of, and maybe because justice is such a hot button issue, and if you talk to people who are in one camp, they're going to have their understanding what justice is. If you talk to people in another camp, they're going to have their understanding. That's a hot button term. So I might dial that one back. But what would it be like to have discussions around moderation? And there are groups that do this in terms of uh, Braver Angels being one, or living room conversations, another. People practice having a discussion. It's moderated, as Angie pointed out. We have moderated discussions, and people practice taking on the role of moderator. And so that you don't just feel like consultants or moderators come in, but everybody learns those skills. Or could there be a frugality campaign? That seemed to be something that was part of the conservation movement in the 70s. Um, oh, I just forgot her name, and I bet some of you may have even known her. Danella Meadows, and her understanding of, that we live simply. The Quakers have always talked about this. So could there be a movement around frugality that would, I mean, I would love to see hunters and snowmobilers and cross-country skiers and new transplants to Vermont who came because they thought this would be a safe refuge for them, all coming together to brainstorm about frugality. That to me seems like that would be a healthy way to go. So be careful about words when they're too abstract. And if we can start to talk about practicalities, that's usually a better thing. Angela, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just in terms of thinking of frugality of our time and maybe even with our words, it makes me think. I think where I was at in my head was you have an opinion about an issue. I
Mm-hmm.
have a differing opinion about that same issue.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you wasting your time forcing me to change my mind because you don't like the way I
Mm-hmm.
think about the same thing? That is a total waste of everybody's time.
Yeah.
And I think too, we've also lost um the skill of debate.
Yes.
And if you look at even the political so-called debates during an
Yeah.
election cycle,
Yeah.
what can you say in a 5 minute
Yeah.
to change somebody's mind in
Yeah.
a way that and I'm going to get a little rambly here, but a
Yeah.
girlfriend and I, we were speaking about Charlie Kirk the other day.
Mm-hmm.
She absolutely adored the man, and I had never heard of him until he'd been assassinated,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't understand why it was such a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I looked him up, and I said to her, this thing he called debates were not true debates.
Mm-hmm.
He came armed with information and argument and facts and figures, and then allowed people to ask a question without having the same set of facts or whatever, so he could mow them down. That is not a debate. And she was annoyed by that, and I left it there. But that's the thing that I was talking about with the frugality of our time. You're
Mhm.
shouting at me because I don't agree with you.
Mhm.
Stop doing that. I don't
Mm.
agree. And I may come around if you explain, but if you
Ah,
don't,
yeah,
I'm not going to.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Angela, I'm with you. Oh, go ahead, Angie.
I was just gonna say, a lot of what everyone's saying right now reminds me of the NPR show One Small Step. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
anyone here has listened to it. If you haven't, I recommend it. But they do moderated conversations with people on opposing sides, and it really is a great model for how you could discuss
Yeah,
these things with people in an effective way,
yeah,
where it really is about listening and understanding the other side, not about convincing the
right.
other side to go
Yeah,
to your side. So if you haven't heard of it, NPR One Small Step.
yeah, yeah. I participated in the VPR version. It was a great thing to do. The Angela's point about debate, I understand why Charlie Kirk uses the style that he does. Because if you've seen forensics in high schools around the country, I think they've sort of gone out of favor. But and oh, Vermont at the Coolidge Homestead every summer. For those of you who are interested in good debate, the Coolidge Center has a national debating forum. They bring kids from all over the country, and it's very fast. You only have a certain amount of moments to do it, and they debate the same proposition. So you hear the same debate over and over and over again. And I've been a judge there before, and it's just lovely to see the students thinking very logically. But they are using what Angela was talking about, that it's a debate where you win by points because you have more facts than the other person has facts. So it almost becomes quantitative. I'm beginning to use the word persuasion because persuasion is a old form of speaking, and Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Ellen Frances Watkins Perkins. Uh-oh, I'm now forgetting her name. Anyway, some of the great abolitionist speakers understood how to use persuasion, and step number one is meet the person where they're at. Understand their prejudices, because we all have prejudices. So when you speak to somebody, you are speaking to them in a place that they're going to be interested, as opposed to just speaking at them. I would love to see more persuasion in schools, more oratory. We used to do this, um, but to be done.
Um,
And yeah, go
Meg,
ahead, Angie.
I'm just looking at the time. There's
Mm-hmm.
one question in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also wanted to call out last call for
Yeah,
questions as
great.
well for people to either
Yeah.
start typing in the chat box or use the raise hand feature if you'd like to say your question.
Mm-hmm.
So Meg, what's in the chat box right now is from Trina. And Trina says that she likes to use the phrase human flourishing rather than happiness.
Yeah.
So the pursuit of human flourishing, maybe instead of the pursuit of happiness, feels
Yeah.
more inclusive of the richness of a good life, which may include shared sorrow, hard but worthwhile work, depth, growth, meaning. Happiness too often connotes feelings of feeling great all the time, and which is
Yeah.
not actually the measure of a good life.
Yeah. I love that, Trina. Thank you. The word happiness is the American version of eudaimonia, the Greek word that means human flourishing. So, yeah, I'm totally with you. And too bad they didn't put a pursuit of human flourishing in the Declaration. But I think it's because all those guys were reading Aristotle and Socrates. And so that was what they were thinking. But nowadays, I'm totally with you. And Trina, do you want to say anything more about how you've come to understand the importance of human flourishing, if you wish? I know I'm putting you on the spot. It's a very long story. All right. Well,
Fair enough.
I will happy to ever get an email about human flourishing. Thank you.
Okay, so the last question in the chat box right now is from Becky, and it
Ah,
says, speaking to rather than at
yeah.
is very important. It seems like what we're missing is the importance of protecting each other's rights and
Yeah.
flourishment, and not just protecting our own.
Oh, Becky, I love that. I mean, that gets to that caretaking, that when we're speaking to another person, we have their heart in our hands. Do you want to say anything more about that, Becky, or how you understand that difference?
No, I don't have more to say really. Um, uh, but it's just it's so important. When I look at the way we're all divided,
Yeah.
um, and in the Congress or anywhere, the idea of protecting each other
Yes.
it
Yeah.
seems like what we're really missing
Right.
at a
Now,
deep level.
for people who don't know Becky, she leads people in song in the most beautiful way and getting all these different harmonies out there. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to do, right? To go into Congress and say, okay, you're going to have to support each other. We want to get this lovely chord. We want this melody to come in here. Can you hold back, support them? I could just imagine you doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your questions. We are at the end of our time here. Meg, for those people who still have questions or they want to reach out and discuss more with you or learn more with you, how is the best way to reach you?
So I know I always feel strange about this, but I do have a website and it has my email on it. So I'm going to put in the chat the URL for the website.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm anybody, especially my heart is going into how can we depolarize in Vermont in creative ways, historical ways, visionary ways. So it's wonderful to be able to talk about this with you all and hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Meg, so much for leading this discussion. It was a great conversation, and ultimately, it reminded me that every study I've ever read about on happiness has resulted in one conclusion, and that is our relationships with other people.
Mhm.
And that is particularly interesting for me because I think I was going into this, I've always thought of the 18th century writers writing about the pursuit of happiness primarily as land ownership.
Mm,
Like Ethan Allen and his land company up here is what brought him to Vermont. And, that's a lot of what they were fighting for was property rights, it seems. And so this conversation was really helpful for me to really reframe that phrase and reminding me about the 18th century pursuit of happiness
mhm.
matching with all these modern scientific studies on happiness that just say you need community, you need
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and
To
that's what's
become
most
better
important.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined us. I'm putting in the chat one more time the link that you can click to support the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. We are a 501c3 nonprofit museum. We bring educational program to everybody year round, and then May through October, we're open to the public and do school field trips as well. And we are just under $900 away from our winter fundraising goal. So if everybody on this call right now donated $10, that would really help us get towards that next step. So we really appreciate you. Oh yes, and Angela Moody, who's our membership chair, says you can also join from that link. You can join to become a member, which helps sustain us year round as well. Thank you so much for your support. And thank you again to Meg. Please, everyone, you can do your silent or clapping applause. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope everyone here is able to join us next month on March 15th in person at the museum for our
Oh,
next presentation as well. And if you want to see this again, it'll be available on YouTube on our channel, Ethan Allen Homestead, in just a week or so.
great. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
organizing.
Enjoy your wintry sunny day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.